Welcome to the HERHealth Podcast, transforming health for women and girls at risk, where we empower women and girls to take charge of their health and well-being. Join us as we shine a spotlight on issues affecting women and girls' health and explore ways to create positive change. Get ready to be inspired and empowered as we discuss health, advocacy, and empowerment for women and girls at risk. Please be advised that this podcast may cover sensitive topics such as gendered violence. We understand that these discussions can be difficult to listen to. If you feel uncomfortable or need support, we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Consider exploring our other podcasts if these topics are triggering for you. Resources can be found in the description.
Welcome to the HERHealth Podcast, where we've been bringing forward voices and ideas that are reshaping the health and social service landscape for those impacted by violence and adversity. I'm your host, Alexandria Lazochek, and today's episode, we're shining a light on a topic that's often overlooked, men's experiences of abuse. Our guest today is Dr. Susan Chuang, a professor at the University of Guelph and an accredited family mediator with over 25 years of experience in parenting, family dynamics, and human development. Her work spans mental health, fathering, parent-child relationships, and more recently, family breakdowns, intimate partner abuse, and false allegations, all examined through rigorous research and a deep compassion for diverse lived experiences. In her interactive webinar, I Know a Guy, Dr. Chuang invites us to broaden our understanding of abuse to include men's stories, challenge assumptions, and find common ground for collective healing. So today we'll unpack the research, reflect on real-world implications, and explore what it means to support all people impacted by abuse. Well, thank you so much, Sue, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about these really complex and serious issues.
Absolutely. We'll dive in. So your webinar, I Know a Guy, explores men experiences of abuse, a topic that's often left out of mainstream conversations.
Yes.
What motivated you to focus on this, and what do you hope people take away?
Actually, for the first 20 years of my academic career, I focused on positive fathering and father engagement. And actually, it wasn't until one of my master's students wanted to look at intimate partner violence against men. And then I said, oh, if you're going to look at that, which there's not a lot of research attention to it, you should look at fathers. And then, so that was in December 2020. And then when I started to hear the stories, I was actually shocked. So I don't do union breakdowns, divorce, separation, abuse. But when I started to hear the stories and the impact on children, I could not turn away. I was like, well, there's children growing up without a parent, or there's false allegations, or like the complexities of going through the family court system was shocking to me. And so in 2021, I decided to flip my whole research agenda and to really focus on what is in the best interest of children, what is going on in these families, whether, the victims are men, women, boys, girls, children, people, right? I mean, nowadays with gender fluidity, it's a person, an individual being abused. This is, to me, like disheartening to hear, especially to children. So that's what I jumped in. And then as I go down this dark hole, there's a lot of things that are going on down there that is really needs greater attention too. So this is how I got motivated into this space. I can't walk away. I'm in it.
Wow, what a very interesting kind of like take, like just how like you got involved in it from a
My
master's
master
student.
Yep.
Yeah,
So master students, where are you? Let's do it. What topic do you want to do? I'm okay with it.
Amazing. And yeah, coming out of this, like one of your key messages about abuse is that it knows no boundaries such as age, gender, or background. And kind of into your webinar, what does the data say about men's experience of abuse, and why do we need to pay more attention?
Yeah, men experience abuse similar to women. In terms of physical abuse, yes, women do suffer greater harm, of course, right? But it's the different forms of abuses. It literally has no boundaries. Even very young children are experiencing child abuse, right? So in that webinar, I was talking where recent Canadian stats, 60% of children have experienced some form of abuse, and it's primarily emotional abuse, right? It doesn't mean all their whole childhood. It doesn't mean, but here and there, I think that when we don't acknowledge that abuse has no boundaries, and if you only say, well, it only happens, it's a gendered issue and not a human issue, this becomes highly problematic because then you don't really look at the real implications of all of it, right? And if you also, predetermine that a certain gender are perpetrators, a certain gender are victims, this is highly problematic. Then it takes away the voices of those who are victimized, and those who are victimized and are not dealt with, like they continue to be victims and or perpetrators, right? So this becomes a greater social issue, right? And so acknowledging it, right? That anybody can perpetrate. All of us know a mean person, across the genders. Okay. All of us have seen, abuse in various ways, name calling, pushing, you see it in the media, you see this in movies, but it's more okay for certain genders to do it against another gender. And that's not okay. And there's a lot of, especially when children are involved, a lot of parents who are being, whether mothers, fathers, caregivers, social parents, right? When they're not a part of that child's life, when they were a part of their lives, it's devastating. And so acknowledging the psychological, the emotional, the physical, or whatever the various abuses are, and really combating it, right? We can break the generational trend, right? Because otherwise, children, who see things, do things, it will be intergenerational, for as everything else is, right? And so we have to acknowledge that men do suffer abuse. Men do. Men are 8 times more likely, divorced men are 8 times more likely to commit suicide, even suicide in general, right? And so this is problematic. Children, adolescents, they die by suicide. Why? Because there's various abuses of various kinds, even cyberbullying. And you Google it, you look on YouTube. There's so many stories out there. Various forms of abuses at different ages is rampant. And so how do we combat that? Well, then we don't gender it. We don't put a race to it. We don't put an ethnicity or a background or an age. It's like it's everywhere. So what do we need to do?
Absolutely. And yeah, that like just you kind of open this can of worms a little bit that everything that we consume, that we see in the media,
Yeah.
kind of influences what we think about what abuse may be or what it should look like, right? And so I really appreciate you diving in that it doesn't look one certain type of way.
Correct.
Kind of following that, what are some of the findings that surprised you or challenged common narratives that we've seen in the past?
This whole area was shocking to me. As a researcher, I got 4 degrees and I was like, and I teach human development. I teach the dark stuff in classes, but not really. And it wasn't until I heard the stories in 2020, I'm like, what is going on? This is Canada that this is happening to? Or, it's all of it is shocking. What's really shocking to me, though, are the Canadian stats on when there's a union breakdown. And the non-residential parent, which is usually the father, because when there's a separation, almost 90% of the children are with the mothers. That at separation, up to 44% of the children will rarely see the other parent, will rarely see the non-residential parent. Almost 1 in 5 will not have any contact with the other parent. And there's no way that 20% of those union breakdowns is because that parent is so violent, so abusive that, I mean, that, of course, because if you're abusive, you're harmful, you have no right to be with a child, right? Under those circumstances, right? But there's no way it's 20%, right? And even 2 years after a divorce, it's 1 in 5 children don't, whether it's intentional or not, it's not malicious or not, but there's a drifting, right? The child will have, 1 in 5 children will not have any contact with that parent. After 10 years, it's 40%. And that is shocking. And then also, it's not just that parent. What's shocking, but what makes it even more detrimental is the extended family that tends to also go away. right? As I was in this world of abuse and harm, in 2021, I also people started to contact me about alienated grandparents. To me, which is shocking as well, because I grew up with my grandmother, who like I shared rooms with her. And I'm like, what? Like that also. And especially when you're older and you help babysit your grandchildren, then over time, all of a sudden you're not needed. And then you don't see them anymore. Like to me, it's devastating. So it's this whole world, this whole dark world that to me is just surprising. So I can't stop. And my other area now is also looking at, abuses and also looking a little bit into false allegations and then where the parent ends up incarcerated. So now my road now is also looking at children with incarcerated parents. Right. So all of these issues, right? It's to me is all quite shocking.
Absolutely. Yeah, I truly appreciate it. And your work doesn't really shy away from these complex topics like as you mentioned, false
I know
allegations.
it should, right? But my colleagues
well,
have told me, Sue, what are you doing? I'm like, but I can't unhear that. I can't unsee things. And
exactly.
academic
And
freedom is like, we have to go down this road. We have to.
when you're going down this road, how do you approach these complex issues with care, balance, and evidence?
This is why if you go on to, not to, do advertising, but if you go to www.ifalliance.net, that's why in 2021, I love organizing conferences, but then because this is such a unique area, I decided to find everybody from literally around the world to see who's in this space. And because I was introduced to Zoom because of COVID, I Zoomed with like that first conference in 2022. We were able to get 60 presentations, panel sessions, keynote speakers from 21 countries and regions. I don't do this in isolation. And many times we work in isolation. I find who are the leaders of the field. What are they doing? And also in my conferences, in my discussions, in my meetings, I don't just talk to academics. Us academics, a lot of times the research, does it really apply to the world? Theory and practice don't necessarily go hand in hand. But my conferences or whatever, I talk to people on the ground, talk to people with lived experiences. That's extremely impactful. That's how I got into this is the lived experiences I was hearing. But also the social workers, the lawyers, the family mediators, the therapists, the counselors. It's like everybody who touches these families, I need to talk with you. I've talked to executive directors. I've talked to whoever, caseworkers. Let's talk, let's meet, and let's have a discussion, right? And then also from around the world, what are other countries doing? Maybe they're ahead of us a little bit, or maybe we're ahead of them. How can we work together, right? And but it's really listening to the stories because and being able to ask the questions and so I've been very honored and blessed with the people I've talked with because I'm like, I don't know anything. Can I just ask you? Like I know one father in jail. I was like, can I ask you about all these issues? And they're like, yeah, whatever you want. I'm like, okay, let me ask because I have so many questions. It's like, okay, then how can I navigate that? How can I look at that in an empirically based way? Right? What are the studies that are out there? Yes, because all of us have our own biases. All of us have our own ways of thinking, our theoretical frameworks. But then let's go to national data. It's important to get different forms of data. Are there meta-analysis? Are there people that look across, not just one little study? You can bias any study that you want. You can word a question in a certain way to look at it left, right. Come on, we're all skilled at this. But then how about study after study after study? How about national data sets? How about talking to lived experiences? How do we then navigate all of that? And not being so because in one way, when I entered into this field, I knew nothing. And that was, I think, a blessing because I was like, okay, let's bring everybody together. Who's got something to say? And then let's navigate that. Right. So it's really important but then to be also critical about the methodology that's being used. The questions that you're being asked, like I said, you can slant anything the way you want. That's why I say, okay, boundary crossings. Have you ever engaged in a boundary crossing? And then explain that. I'm not going to give you a terminal. I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to give you any leading questions. I'm not going to say, were you physically hurt, abused? No, it's like, I'm going to give you maybe some of the, behaviors, if you've engaged in them, right? But I just want to know openly what's going on and then run the numbers accordingly. And everything is always going to be biased, but that's why it's really important to then place it in the bigger picture, place it in context of other research, and also not to be shy. This field has been difficult. It's looking at violence against men, violence against fathers. People have warned me to be in the space, but then it's like, but the bottom line is, why do we care? It's for the boys. It's for people, because if we don't really have a better understanding of this, it's not going to get better, and it's going to go to the next generation, to the next generation, to the next. This is problematic. So there's only so much time in the day, but that's why you have to work with everybody else to see what everybody else is doing so we don't replicate, or over, but then it's like, okay, but then if we are going to do a study, what are your thoughts about it? What are mine? What somebody else's? And then try our best to design a study that is meaningful. Right. And that's the best that we can do. That's why I do conferences, to actually then present. Okay, what's the audience saying about this? And that's why I tell, especially academics, like, don't tell me about your methodology and what kind of analysis you ran. Nobody cares. Get to the bottom line. I give you 12 minutes. I give you 13 minutes. Get to the bottom line. Tell me what's going on so that we can then open it up for a Q&A and let people challenge you, right? Or ask questions or give you a different way of seeing something, right? I don't care if you ran a regression. I don't care if you did an SEM. I don't care. Nobody cares. I don't care how many stars you've got, 1 star, 3 stars. What does that even mean in the end? How is it impacting families? Come on.
Absolutely. And studying anything requires community. You need to talk to different experts in different fields. And kind of going back to your webinar, how do you think culture, community, and identity shape men's experiences with abuse and their access to support?
Right. I mean, it's huge, right? And also, what is culture in terms of, like, there's ethnic cultures, there's gender culture, there's country culture. I mean, you add up all the layers. And yeah, there are cultures, and also back in the day, this is why we have laws. If there was no such thing as abuse, there would be no laws about abuse and violence. Okay. And back in the day, women and children were seen as property for a reason, right? So there was tons of abuse. There was like ridiculous amounts, right? But the question then is that now that we're in 2025, now we have laws against this. It's maybe in your culture, it's done. Maybe hitting is okay. And actually, one of my students, my doctoral students, she's from Bangladesh, right? And the stats of family violence is shocking, right? Because the way the culture is, it's like, but that doesn't make it okay, right? Just because that happens doesn't then mean then it's okay for you. You're able to get away with it, but then let's find ways, at least in Canada or places where you're protected, to have a safety way out, or to at least educate people to, rather than yelling, screaming, demeaning, there's other ways of doing this. How can you deal with your issues? I think a lot of times you'll see that, people who have been perpetrators or whatever, if you look back, let's take a lifespan approach. What happened in childhood? How were you growing up? And you can trace it back, right? So that then doesn't make it okay, but it gives you a better understanding to the context of why you're doing this or saying this. It gives us a better context to how you see your power in your family. In your relationship, is it 50-50? You think it's not okay? Well, it should be, unless you find somebody who is okay with that. But I think in Canada, people are not okay with that. Right? But it's more of having a clear understanding that we all know what abuse is. We all know when somebody hits us, that hurts. Or somebody calls us names, that hurts. You are violating my right, my safety, emotional, physical. That is not okay. Well, but then what are the ways and mechanisms that we can deal with this in safe ways, right? You can't just say, hey, tell the person to talk back. No, because that might get that person killed or, severely injured, right? But what are ways that we can work together to educate people to then understand, first of all, what is a healthy relationship? Are you in an abusive relationship? Are you starting in a relationship? In the webinar, I was just talking about, early romantic relationships, and a good portion of young teens are experiencing emotional abuse, right? How do we educate them in this day and age, right? Like technology and everything and what they're seeing online, like things are changing fast. So then where are the safe places to talk about these issues? Where are the safe places that are trauma informed, gender informed, to seek out help, to seek out empathy and compassion, and then thinking of actual strategies of moving forward? Don't talk up in the sky. Nobody cares about the sky, right? But what am I going to do now? I don't care who developed that theory. I don't care about that construct, what it's called. Oh, I need something now. What are we going to do? And how do I make sure that we're all safe?
Absolutely. One of the big things that I was really like shocked to learn when getting to the field the first time was the lifespan approach. Even with
Right.
like teen dating, experiencing very like high rates of emotional abuse with their dating partners, even as young children get experiencing and also
Yep.
being in
1 in 5. Yeah.
yeah, try like very it and then knowing all the trickle down effects that happen later in life from these children experiencing abuse.
Right.
And you've done so much extensive workshops and family intervention. So I wanted to ask the practical insights or strategies you can offer to families kind of navigating these challenges.
Oh, there's so much to say, and I only have a few minutes. That's so unfair of you to ask me. But I think that one of the things, I mean, for all of my parenting youth workshops that I provide, the bottom line is mental health, right? And seeking out help. I think that, and being Chinese, a Taiwanese Canadian, but in the Asian culture, but I think it's across cultures that seeking out assistance or letting people know. When a child says, I am not happy, something is going on for sure, right? But it's more for it's educating, informing, what are the best practices? So for example, I have 2 masters, I have a doctorate. Okay. I spent a lot of time, right? Educating myself, getting prepared for my job. Many people out there as well. I ask you, how many years have you spent to get to where you are today in terms of your job? Okay, great. Now, those who are parents, how many years? No, not years, not months, not maybe a couple of days. How many days did you spend to be and to know about child development, to then know about parenting? To be an effective parent, you need to know about child development, youth development. What's supposed to happen? Because how do you then help facilitate and support their development? Right. And so even though I'm not a therapist or a counselor, I've gone into hundreds of homes that were supposedly in crisis situations. Some principals have called me, social workers have called me. I am like the last resort. I don't have any training in therapy or counseling, but I have my education behind me. And the things that I tell them, most times than not, it's not a crisis situation at all. I'm able to resolve it fairly quickly. And why? Because the information that I give them actually can be found in a first year textbook, right? And so, I mean, I just so happen to be writing a human development textbook, but all that information is there, right? And it's more of parenting to be a united front. Even in your partner, whether you have children or not, are you a united front? Are you giving each other the benefit of the doubt when something happens? Right? When when you hear something, are you negotiating? Are you compromising? If you're angry, do you have anger issues? Are you walking away? Are you coming back later? Right? And I think a lot of times people get angry, they get frustrated, and that becomes the escalating part. It's like, but you're not fighting about this particular thing today, right? Actually, there's an undertone behind it. Many times when I go into families, the parents come and go, okay, fix my child. It's like, it's not your child that I'm here to fix. I say, put your child upstairs. They can't hear us because I don't want to reprimand them. I reprimand you in front of your children, right? But it's like, no, no, no. We need to have a conversation. I need to know the dynamics of the parenting or what the relationship is. And usually I would say, okay, are there any grudges? Is there anything between the both of you that you're okay to say right now? You're holding on to? Let's get it out right now. And because it's the underlining tone that is coming through and through and through time and time again. What is it? And you need to release it. And if you can't, then maybe when I go into families, I'm not saying, okay, you have to stay together, because some people absolutely should not be together. They cannot be together, but they can still co-parent, right? But it's more of having that understanding, that level of acknowledgement of each other as well. When your partner does start to improve or does something bad, do you actually acknowledge? Or like when your children said, you know what, I'm going to do better. I'm going to not watch, be on the screen so much. And then you see it, but then you don't say anything about it. That little bit of acknowledgement goes a long way. The benefit of the doubt goes a huge way, right? And being able to communicate. That is, and then about issues and talking and asking questions, not being offended. Oh, there's so many things to say. I can just go on, but I kind of forgot the question.
I think you nailed it on the
stories in my mind right now that I could tell, but I forgot the question. Sorry.
It's all good. I think you did a great job kind of answering the question of practical insights and strategies.
Oh, yes, practical insights.
And yeah, I don't.
And
yeah,
also, I think another one, if I may, is hug your partners, hug the loved ones every day. A hug is 2 seconds, but actually it helps physiologically, because it lowers your stress levels. It lowers your cortisol levels, right? And that takes like 1 second, 2 seconds, a hug. Actually, hug your partner and count to 5. You see how long 5 seconds are, right? And text your loved ones every day. Don't expect especially for children, parents to children. Text them every day. Text your loved ones every day. Just like, hi, take a picture, send it. And just letting them know that somebody's thinking about them. And that took what? 1 second, 5 seconds of your super busy day. Who's the most important in your life? And how much time are you actually giving them? Or are you thinking of somebody else who should not take any real estate in your brain? They're negative people. Get them out. You know what I'm saying? This is right.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
It's so, I always hear like the simplest things can make such a big difference in
Huge
the
difference.
long run. Huge.
Yes.
And yeah, I kind of go into like the next question and what kind of prevents, I'm curious what prevents men from disclosing abuse or seeking support. I know in your webinar, you talked about community services may not be the most trauma informed or may not have the most like gendered approaches when talking to men or gender diverse people. So I'm curious, how can systems and communities create safer spaces for men to come forward with their stories?
Right. I think that a lot of men, based on my study and many other studies, have actually said that it's shameful. You're a guy. What? You're bigger than her or him, or whoever the other partner is, right? Toughen up, be manly. So there's a lot of shame that goes into something when you need to seek out help, when you're being abused, right? I think a lot of and a lot of stigma comes with that. There are studies that actually have found that when men actually, like, how bad a situation has to be when a man calls the police. And in Canada, the rule is that somebody shall be arrested if there's a domestic violence call. And a good number of times, it's the person who asks for help, the guy, is the one who actually gets arrested, right? Or being laughed at. Right. I think that when I tell stories, there are people who do laugh. They think it is funny. And then it's like, wait, it's not funny. But you would never laugh if a woman said that, and there's videos, you see this on a talk show. I show that as part of my webinar when I have longer time. But, you see this when a guy talks about, there's one video from the UK, and he's saying how he had to lock himself in his bedroom, and she was trying to break in, that he was so scared he couldn't go that way. He actually jumped out of his balcony and broke his leg. And, he was 3 stories down, and the audience was laughing. And actually the host caught them all and said, hey, what are you people doing? You're laughing. You would never do that if a woman said this. And you would be the first to say that this person needs to be arrested. And meanwhile, they go to the woman and she's like shaking her head. Yep, I beat him. Yep. That could never happen. That guy would be arrested immediately. And so I think that there's a lot of shame, a lot of ridicule. It's difficult. It's difficult for actually beyond gender. It's difficult just to ask for help. But I think that the way our socialization is, about girls are more emotional. Girls like to talk, and they're given more space. Especially even if it's not abuse, even like if there's a death in the family, where's the support, right, that goes forward. More girls, women tend to have more social networks to help them through whatever they need to go through. And guys don't really have that network. That's why you see even like older couples, like if the woman, there's, the stats are when the woman, the woman passes, the men pass 6 months shortly thereafter, but then the other way, the women can last longer because they have more supports. There's, right. So it's more of that kind of thinking that men don't cry, boys don't cry. Everybody cries. I'm sorry. That's just not true. Right. And then so you see a lot of, famous people or sports or people trying to say, try to raise greater awareness because men are more likely to commit suicide, and so, but what are we doing about that? Is anything being done? I remember years ago, there was a headline, men were 75% more likely to commit suicide, but were there, was there money for men's services? Like, I don't think so. Like, if you were to think right now, if you were a guy, and you needed help, where would you go? Right? And is that place equipped for you? Right? There's not a lot. And this is problematic. Or if you're a father with young children and you're being abused and you have to go. Is there a shelter for you? There's like now maybe only 2 or 3 shelters in Canada. In all of Canada. Right? What does that say? And this isn't, and some people think, well, then you're taking away from women. No, we're not. It's not. It's trying to assist all, right? And believing when somebody says they're being abused, to believe them, but then also saying, okay, what is going on, right? And so, but it's difficult, and a lot of times, regardless of gender, a lot of people don't actually realize that they're in an unhealthy relationship. I teach human development at the University of Guelph. I teach those classes in person, 500 students. And when we go into the middle, when we're talking about abuse, I actually ask them to my whole class. I say, are you in or know of directly of a person in an abusive relationship? And we go through it, right? And we're talking about the age stage of emerging adulthood, the 20s. All the hands go up. Everybody knows somebody. And that's why when my webinar is like, I know a guy. Well, I know a person. We all know somebody, right? And so but what are we doing about it? When somebody comes to you or you hear something about it, what are you doing? Maybe you're not equipped to actually counsel them. Let's say go counsel them. You can do harm, but then can you say, you know what? I'll go with you. Let's go. Let's do something together. What can we do? What will be useful for you? You want me to listen? I'll listen. But don't laugh. Don't joke about it. Don't say toughen up. Grow up. Be a man. Be a person. Whatever it is. Right? That is actually harmful. Then it's better for you to just shut up and walk away.
Mm-hmm. Definitely coming at these situations with humility is huge. And you don't need to be a trained peer supporter to support someone. You can
Right.
be there to listen. And a lot of times people will express what they need in those situations. So
Yeah.
to listen is really important. Thank you so much for really diving into that. I really appreciate it. I know that we're entering very turbulent times. I know there's a lot of negativity right now in many different facets. You said a little bit of knowledge can go a long way. So I'm curious what gives you hope in this work and how we can all synergize our efforts to support all efforts or all families, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's just more of finding out what are all the resources. I think there's a lot of resources on AVA training on your website, and they're free training, right? And so I think that if we all just kind of be more aware of each other, not one organization can deal with everything, but then how can we synergize and know where the help would be? Also being open-minded and hearing what is going on and then trying to do something about it. Right. And trying to advocate for those who can't talk, or, who are being silenced. Right. It's more of because it's not just that person, it's the family, it's the next generation. Right. And I think that a lot of times, especially like in union breakdowns in Canada, like it's like 40%, 50%, depending on how you're going to count the union breakdowns, like married versus common law. But it's, that in and of itself, like how do we say and help people who like maybe you shouldn't be together, but then how do you break up in an amicable way? how do you, if you have children, how can you co-parent in effective ways, right? And not be fighting tooth and nail, because in the end, it's in the best interest of children. But a lot of times, it's not, because people think, oh, well, it's not really my child, but oh man, I'm going to get you. It's like, but it is your children. Bottom line is, right? And how can we work together, and being willing to say, you know what, I need to take a step back. What did you mean by that? That's not what I intended. Okay, so what are better ways of moving forward? Or where can I compromise, right? If somebody is, but then, I mean, of course, if somebody is abusive and doesn't recognize and doesn't acknowledge, you can't be with that person. But then, can you make sure that you are safe? Can you make sure, like I said in the webinar, there was just recently, there was 2 women who were not in safe relationships. Okay, so then how can we figure out, here are some steps, but I don't know everything. Hey, give them a call, find out what you can do, and be prepared, and make sure you have your way out. So regardless, if you're just not in a safe relationship, don't think it'll get better. Don't think maybe that person will change. No, probably not, unless they acknowledge it and they're seeking out help, or they're doing something that you see evidence of, right? And then, you know what? Put your pride aside, right? And deal with those issues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Sue. I really appreciate you diving into this really intimate conversation, but such an important conversation for everyone to listen to. So I really appreciate it. Was there anything you would like to add or shout out at the end of this episode?
I just wanted to say, I hope everybody is safe. I hope everybody has a supportive network around them, whether it's, your families, your friends, both colleagues. If you ever need my assistance, or you want to have a chat, or you need some advice, reach out to me. I am at the University of Guelph. You can find my email there, or you can go to ifalliance.net. We have some great work going on. Or if it's not me and you don't want to connect to somebody that's on my website, on my programs, I'll connect you. That's not a problem. The point is, let's connect everybody to make sure that, you get your needs met. And hug your family every day. Tell your people that you love them, because that's really important. People don't say, and people want to hear, I love you. People want to hear that I care about you. I'm thinking about you. Send a text. So anyways, show your love in healthy ways.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on the HERHealth Podcast, transforming health for women and girls at risk. Remember, your health matters, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, remember to prioritize your health and well-being. For more resources and support on issues affecting girls, women, and gender-diverse people, visit our website at avatraining.ca. This is Dr. Nicole Letourneau. Thank you for listening.